Hey guys, welcome back. I been hard at work trying to diagnose some of our issues, and I actually have. So now it's time to show you what's been the problem. I know we've had multiples of them, but let's go ahead and talk about it. So first of all, we put in a new brake pedal system. We put in the new master cylinder, mounted everything up. Now the brakes work. Absolutely fantastic. So that's all working good. I still have to move the bias valve, but that should be relatively easy to do. It clears the suspension grate, but it has created one more problem, which has to do with the steering. So I basically don't have any room over which to attach a universal joint and move it around the brake system. So I don't know what I'm going to do. So I may have to do a transfer bar or something of that nature. I know that they do those for some hot rods, but how safe are those? I don't know. So I'm gonna figure that one out. But we might try a chain drive on this. I've seen that done before, so we'll see how that works out and how comfortable I am with that. But so anyway, brakes and clutch are working perfectly. Other thing I did was I took out the oil pan. I'm not a real big fan of these Batwing oil pans, so I'm going to replace it with a standard oil pan. So they do make a kit that you can use to convert. Now, some of you noticed that my returns on my oil for the turbos is not quite free flowing because it's in the bottom of these bat wings. And if the pan is full of oil, that creates a situation where there's back pressure on the oil drain. And I think that may be what has been happening in combination with something else that has to do with the turbo. So we're going to replace the pan, and we're going to move these guys, these bungs, up much higher on the oil pan for the return line. And then the other thing I want to do is make sure that the return line is free flowing, doesn't have any dips in it, so that oil can just kind of settle in a certain spot. So we want to make it a straight shot. So what that led to is me taking one of the turbos out. So I have one of the turbos out here, and you can see all of this gunk in here, which, you know, carbon buildup you wouldn't normally see as an issue, but this is excessive. So and it's wet. So that means that oil is getting through this seal right here, which is obviously, this is some sort of gasket that can handle the high temperatures. And that's supposed to be sealed down nicely when you put the clamps on and clamp it onto this housing. So I think what's going on is that that's not seating properly, and therefore oil's leaking past it and then getting into the exhaust side, and that's the smoke that we're seeing coming out. And that could be a cause of back pressure on the return line, forcing oil out through here, because we have oil up here that comes in at high pressure and sprays down on the thing, and then has a much larger orifice here to leak out. But you can see all of that crap that's getting passed on the hot side of the turbo. And if I look at the exhaust coming in, so I look at the inlet here, I don't see any wet on the inside of the exhaust from the engine. So I don't think that that's the issue, and I don't think that that's what's going on. So yeah, I think for due diligence, I'm going to take the other turbo out and take it apart and make sure that that seal has not been compromised there. It could be producing smoke and oil leaking out, and I'm just not seeing it as much as this one, because this one's really bad. So Any suggestions on this are greatly appreciated. And I want to thank our viewers for pointing out this issue with having the returns too low. So, yeah, I think that could cause a big problem with oil basically building up in the line and then forcing that seal leakage through that seal. So, yeah, so now the trick is to go ahead and start repairing all of this stuff. Well, guys, coming back to this, I went and watched a few YouTube videos. You guys know that I like YouTube University a lot. Apparently, this is not an oil seal. This is just a cover. And then there's one subsequently down here as well. The oil seals are inside, and if any back pressure gets into the drain, if it's not big enough, or like me, you put these below the oil level, you end up filling up the oil and it gets past the seals, and Bob's your uncle. So I need to clean this up, put it back together, get it back on the car, fix the drain issues, so that there's no back pressure, and we should be good to go. So we got a lot of work to do, and I'm going to get on it. I'd also like to give a shout out to the two folks who alerted me to this potential problem. So that's Bob Riggles, one of our YouTube viewers, and a YouTube viewer named Barber. I really appreciate it, guys, because I could have just kept going with, oh, the engine sucks and blah, blah, blah. But you guys really set me on the right path. So I think that now everything is going to be a cheap, relatively easy fix moving forward. One of the other things I wanted to mention is my V-band clamp obviously sucks, because this is all this is where I detected the oil leak was coming out of here. And you can see how it's all it's not a clean surface. It's just, so those V-band clamps, which are terrible, I'm going to get some upgraded, better V-band clamps. So I'm going to get some of the quick release ones, which I think are much better. You can see this one is all distorted and kind of trashed. Not my favorite. So I'm ordering some better V-band clamps to avoid this issue, an actual exhaust leak in the future. So we'll show that once we get everything back together. And you can see back here where I've taken the turbo out. Again, I need to make sure that this is free-flowing enough. So one of the things I want to take a look at is potentially getting a corrugated tube that has a much better flow through, because somebody did mention that these AN lines can be somewhat restrictive for turbos. So that's another thing I'm going to look at. I have a vacuum leak. So you can kind of see here, there's actually a hole in the vacuum hose for the wastegate. So that must have, I didn't tie it down good enough, and it must have gone onto the exhaust, and well, there you go. So that's probably one of the reasons why the engine is not performing perfectly. So I'm going to go around and check for vacuum leaks, because that could be a really big problem for the engine. In addition, I have this stupid thing that takes the vent from the valve cover and just reroutes it back into the other thing. I meant to put a filter on there so that it could breathe, so I've got to fix that as too. So I got to make sure that both valve covers can breathe properly. So been looking at the steering after getting the brake system in, and I think if I do a gear here and then another shaft up here with a gear and maybe a chain around it, we could get that snuck down through this area here, have lots of clearance, and then get back down to the rack itself. So that's what I'm going to give a try. And then that way we can keep that distance between the two shafts as small as possible. Therefore, if we're using a chain or something like that, we don't get a lot of stretch, or it doesn't loosen up with a ton of use. And then the other thing is that I've got that Heim joint in there that I can actually use to stretch it or compress it. So we'll see. So that's the update. I got a oil pan coming. I cleaned up and put the turbo back in. I'm getting those V-band clamps so that we can improve the connection between the output exhaust and the turbo. And I've got some parts coming for adjusting the steering. The clutch and the brakes have all been bled and tested, and they seem to work great. So we're on a good path, I think. I'll get that oil pan in and get those bungs welded in above the oil level this time. And then we'll hopefully take it back out for another drive. Check for leaks and everything. And the other thing I'm going to do is the DEI wrap around the cables for the shifter. So we'll see if that works too. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you guys want to contribute to the project, check the link below for Subscribe Star. If you haven't subscribed, please do. And we'll see you next time. Thanks.